Good morning to you on this Friday, my penultimate Friday in the morning drive. So I want you to pay very close attention. Yesterday, normal Americans who had a way to make it happen watched the All-State Sugar Bowl because they wanted to watch Notre Dame in Georgia. And congratulations to the Irish, 23-10. Texted throughout a very good game with my Irish buddies. I'm hoping that Ohio State does not have to crush Notre Dame en route to the national championship, but it may have to. I don't know that Notre Dame get past Penn State. Do you notice that you just have to begin in Happy Valley, then go to Columbus, and then head on over to our third northern team in the playoffs? Who's playing Texas? Ohio State. Who's playing Notre Dame? I'll think of it. Penn State. So it's Notre Dame. So it's Penn State, Ohio State, Notre Dame. 3 out of the Final 4. All northern teams. Listen to Kings of the North. But I hope you enjoyed the game. Good football game. Sort of end of the football season, though the playoffs go on and Ohio State is marching towards its victory. I was a bit stunned at the beginning when Allstate CEO Tom Wilson takes to the field and makes this statement in a video, cut number 8.
Welcome to the All-State Sugar Bowl. Wednesday, tragedy struck the New Orleans community. Our prayers are with the victims and their families. We also need to be stronger together by overcoming an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Join Allstate working in local communities all across America to amplify the positive, increase trust, and accept people's imperfections and differences. Together, we win.
All right, now 23 seconds. Allstate. I am not an Allstate customer. I wouldn't drop my Allstate policy because of this. This is not the moment that Bud Light loses millions of customers by sending branded bottles to Dylan Mulroney, if you remember that. This is not that. This is that. There you have it, Dylan Mulroney and his Bud Light, her Bud Light. And it is a memorable moment in the catastrophic fall of a brand. Now, Allstate works very hard at its brand. Their brand guy is chaos. You may have heard, Adam, if we can play a little bit chaos, that's their brand guy. They spend millions and millions of dollars branding chaos. And they're funny. Like chaos on the kiss cam, chaos at the wedding as the best man watching the game. Yeah, mayhem. And Mayhem does all sorts of funny things. And Mayhem is a good shtick. Allstate. Yeah, get Allstate. Yeah, get Allstate. And they millions and tens of millions of dollars building up a funny ad. And there's a terrible event in New Orleans, the largest terrorist attack in the United States since 9/11, by a jihadi. We don't know about the Las Vegas terror attack because the FBI won't tell us anything. But a big terror attack, Fort Hood comes to mind. A jihadi in New Orleans kills at least 15, wounds 30, would have done more. He's an American, self-radicalized. We'll find out his story. His brother is talking, his other brother is talking. People are talking. We'll find out his story. We are also finding out that the suicide bomber outside of the Trump Hotel in the Cybertruck, not related in my view, given what we learned about him now. So I don't talk much about things until the stories click into place. But Tom Wilson said what he said. And I want to think for a moment about what has happened to corporate communications. This was not an instant reaction. Right? Tom Wilson, who is the CEO of Allstate, understands they have to move the Sugar Bowl. He understands he's got a product to sell and a bold brand, and it's one of his big brand trains. And they're going to have mayhem throughout the game. So he's got to say something about New Orleans, and he comes up with this. Let's play it again, cut number 8.
Welcome to the All-State Sugar Bowl. Wednesday, tragedy struck the New Orleans community. Our prayers are with the victims and their families. We also need to be stronger together by overcoming an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Join Allstate working in local communities all across America to amplify the positive, increase trust, and accept people's imperfections and differences. Together,
All right.
we win.
I'm so astonished by this. Accept people's differences. Is he talking to the Islamists out there? Because he moved from a heartfelt, New Orleans, we're with you, we're proud. I could have written this in 5 minutes. New Orleans, strong. We're proud of you. We're proud of the Sugar Bowl. We're never leaving the Sugar Bowl. Allstate is with you. Allstate will never let you down. Allstate insures the lives and the businesses of people who are hurt by this terrorist, and we hope that terrorism ends, and we call on the government to do everything it can, but Allstate is here to help those who are injured, as we always are. I could have done it in 5 minutes. Anybody in America with a gift for understanding, if you're going to take those 23 seconds before the Sugar Bowl and you're going to mention the terrorism attack the day before, that seems to me to be likely. You don't have to say we have to overcome our addiction to divisiveness and negativity. What is that supposed to mean? An addiction to divisiveness and negativity is blaming the victims in New Orleans. Let's just be blunt. Somebody wrote him this copy. I don't think Mr. Wilson had any idea what he was going to read. I don't know that he did anything except get me something up. No one watches the beginning of the Allstate game. Of course, it took off on social media. This is the era in which you cannot speak on behalf of your company without realizing you are tempting brand damage. And boy, people made fun of. There's other news today, right? Mike Johnson's going to be elected speaker today. A federal appeals court struck down net neutrality. Israel made another daring raid into Syria in Aleppo last night. There's lots of news around the world, but not really. It's the first sort of week of work, and people kind of went to work, but they didn't. And almost everyone I know watched Notre Dame, Georgia yesterday, judging from my text threads, talking to people about the game. I wanted to coach that game because, for whatever reason, Marcus Freeman wouldn't run around the ends. He ran between the tackles. It should have been a 4-touchdown game. Georgia isn't very good without their starting quarterback and a couple other people, and it was just not a very good game. Don't blame the kid on the sidelines. If you watch the game, you know what I'm talking about. Refs ran into a kid in a jersey on the sideline, 15. You know, if I'm the ref, by the way, that ref, come on. Really, come on. Trying to make a Bartman out of the kid, don't do that. And so I'm just still stunned. And I want you to focus for a moment. What has happened to America's corporate communications department is what has happened to America generally. We don't know how to talk. We don't know how to say something. Someone says we have to express some solidarity with communities, not our own. And they come up with this. One more time. Tom Wilson, cut number 8.
Welcome to the Allstate Sugar Bowl. Wednesday, tragedy struck the New Orleans community. Our prayers are with the victims and their families. We also need to be stronger together by overcoming an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Join Allstate working in local communities all across America to amplify the positive, increase trust, and accept people's imperfections and differences. Together, we win.
All right, there are two lines in there. First line is overcome our addiction to divisiveness and negativity and accept other people's differences. Hi, I'm America. I am not addicted to negativity. Anyone who's listened to this show for the past 25 years I've been on Salem Media, or the 10 years before that at PBS, or the 4 years before that at KFI, know I'm an upbeat guy. I want you to be happy. I want you to get to work. I am not addicted to negativity. I'm not addicted to divisiveness. Politics is politics. I am not a terrorist. I don't believe anyone applauds what the terrorists did in New Orleans. I haven't seen that. And I accept people's differences. I always have. I believe in a colorblind society. I don't care what your gender is. Don't care what your race is. Don't care what your age is. I care about how you work, how you perform, the talents you bring to the table, the fact that you're a human being. I'm with C.S. Lewis. You have never met an ordinary mortal. Everyone is an everlasting splendor or an eternal horror, right? If you're a Christian, you have this worldview. I do not need a lecture from the Allstate CEO, who I don't think wrote it, about our addiction to divisiveness and negativity, or that we need to accept each other's differences. I don't know what he's trying to say. And when I come back, I'm going to keep talking about this for 2 more segments. I think he's trying to say, don't blame the terrorists. But really, it's just corporate speak for get me out of here. I don't want to offend anybody. And the fact of the matter is the terrorist was a jihadist. And there's no offending Muslims by talking about jihadis. That's my point. Talking about corporate America and its decline into incoherence. And my example this morning is Tom Wilson, the hapless CEO of Allstate. Now, I'll bet you he's a wonderful guy. I do. I think to become the head of an insurance company like Allstate, which is primarily in the business of insuring everything in your life, your car, your home, your automobile, maybe life insurance. I don't know if they do that. And they spend a lot of money on a very good creative team. So there are creative people who are working for Allstate. They do the Mayhem ads, and we're playing a few of the Mayhem ads on the Salem News Channel. And if you're listening or you're watching this morning, I don't want you to think I want you to change your Allstate policy. I don't. I want you to talk to your boss, or if you are a senior communicator, about speaking clearly what you want to say and knowing what it is that you want to say before you go on, and perhaps testing it out with a professional. If you're going to have a big platform, any kind of big platform is relative to what the event is. You might have a big platform in the 8th grade election. You might have a big platform in running for Congress. You might have a big platform in a debate. Former President and future President Donald Trump has a big platform at True Social and at X. But yesterday, Allstate CEO gets a big platform, and it's after a dramatic event, a horrific, terrible loss of life in New Orleans, and the victims' stories are heartbreaking. So they pull Tom Wilson and they say, you've got to revise whatever we had done before. We've come up with a new script for you, boss. And he looks at it and he reads it and he okays it. So it's Tom Wilson's responsibility. I don't know how it got to him. I don't know how much time he had. All I know is that he chose to go along with the words that were given to him. And here's what he said one more time.
Welcome to the Allstate Sugar Bowl. Wednesday, tragedy struck the New Orleans community. Our prayers are with the victims and their families. We also need to be stronger together by overcoming an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Join Allstate working in local communities all across America to amplify the positive, increase trust, and accept people's imperfections and differences. Together, we win.
All right, so he told us to do a number of things. Amplify the positive. I agree with that. Go to work in your community. Great. But he deigned lecture us on 2 things. We need to overcome our addiction to divisiveness and negativity, and we need to accept people's differences. Now, it goes without saying that we are committed to the Constitution of the United States and at its core, the Declaration of Independence. I teach constitutional law. I make it abundantly clear that we are respectful of everyone, regardless of background or ideology. In the classroom, I do it over and over again. It's about professional demeanor. You never assign blame. You might ask questions. You might indeed come to conclusions. You may get into heated arguments, but you do not impute to the other side. It's the worst debating technique. It's the thing that makes me craziest in any kind of conversation, is when someone imputes to me a position I do not hold. They don't know what I hold. They don't know what I believe. But here is the head of Allstate before a celebratory game in a city struck down by grief, telling people that we need to overcome our addiction to divisiveness and negativity, and then we need to accept people's differences. It's not our fault. It's not America's fault. It isn't anybody's fault except the jihadi who ran his car into the innocent people of Bourbon Street. We have to blame the ideology, which is an extremist version. I'll say the same thing about any extremist who acts on their own in defense of their crazed ideology. It is not the fault of the children who were murdered in Nashville. It's not the fault of the children who were murdered in Sandy Hook. It's not the fault of the people who got shot in Las Vegas. It's not the fault of the dancers at the Orlando nightclub. It is never the victim's fault. So if you're going to take the stage after one of these things, and your phone calls are welcome, 1-800-520-1234. Do not tell Americans they need to overcome their divisiveness and negativity addictions. No, we do not need to overcome our negativity and divisiveness addictions. We are not addicted to negativity and divisiveness. That is a blue bubble mantra from the comms warrens of the Manhattan Beltway media elite with a little sprinkling of tech bro talk and Hollywood blather. It's not true. We already accept people's differences. This is the most tolerant country in history. In history, Mr. Allstate. That music, of course, is from the musical Hamilton. The World Turned Upside Down is allegedly the music which the band played when Lord Cornwallis surrendered the British troops to George Washington at Yorktown on October 19th, 1781. In this wonderful book, Land of Hope, An Invitation to the Great American Story, it's the best by far comprehensive American history. It's college level. A good high school student could get through it. It's college level survey course history stuff. And this will mark my 28th year of teaching con law. And I've had to revise everything, from start to bottom. Adopted a new casebook, a different kind of casebook. This casebook by Randy Barnett and Josh Blackman, which is called An Introduction to Constitutional Law, 100 plus cases. Supreme Court cases everyone should know, and Randy and Josh have done a wonderful job on their video supplements. But I'm also obliging all of my students in both con law and one to read and memorize Land of Hope. And by memorize, I mean they're going to have to outline it, they're going to have to know it, they're going to have to understand American history. Because the biggest development, and it's one that our CEO at Allstate, Mr. Tom Wilson, needs to know, is that over the last 25 years, we've become a country of historically unable people. Disabled people. We are illiterate as to our history. I was reading from the Wilfred McClay book this morning that we don't know for certain whether the band played The World Turned Upside Down. He's very, very good about what we know to be true and what we know to be apocryphal and legend. So it might be legend. But as we've seen, the most influential justifications offered in favor of revolution, and we did engage in a revolution here in the United States in 1776, invoke not radical change, but rather restoration, restoring and protecting the colonists' customary rights as Englishmen, as the pretext for a revolution. But like any great historical event, the American Revolution was complicated with many aspects. Even those fighting on the other side, on the same side, saw things differently. To a greater extent than many of us appreciate today, the Revolutionary War in America took on many aspects of a civil war. Loyalists against patriots, dividing families, towns, regions, social classes, producing fierce struggles over the fundamental political and social values. Loyalty to the crown had been the instinctive response of a sizable minority of Americans. But for some reason, the resonant words of the Declaration of Independence pointed towards a larger aspiration, something more than mere restoration. Such an interpretation pointed towards the emergence on the world stage of something genuinely new, a Republican order built upon a principled commitment to both equality and liberty. Now, I know that the anti-American people are quick to point out that in 1789, when the Constitution is adopted, or 1776, when the Declaration of Independence issues, they're not completed documents. There is slavery in the land. There is the oppression of the native peoples. There is a lot to tell about the warts of America, and we tell them every year in con law. If you teach con law, you're teaching history and you're teaching the warts of America. But at the same time, it's important to realize ours is the most successful experience in Republican government and in freedom in the history of the globe, which is billions of years old, or evolved man, 200,000 years old. Of every government, of every history, ours is the most successful. You're listening to me. Even if you're in Canada, you're second most successful because you're our neighbor. But the most successful experiment in ordered liberty is ours. And we have produced so much wealth, so much extraordinary good for the world, which we've saved twice, three times if you count Reagan and the Soviet Union. We'll do it again. Because America is rich and it's blessed, it's got natural resources. It has knuckleheads for leadership, and we are presently not being led. The current occupant of the White House, genie old fellow, doesn't know where he is most days, is signing a piece of paper today to say he's banning oil drilling forever. That's absurd. That'll be repealed. He's declaring half of California a national monument today. Another absurd stroke of the pen. He's running around doing everything his progressive lefty staff wants him to do. In the meantime, we have a real problem. We have terrorists in the country. We had 2 terror attacks, one by an obvious psychotic break in Nevada. The background of that individual indicates psychotic break. I don't know what about the guy in New Orleans. Takes a long time to plan IEDs, an attack on Bourbon Street at 3:15 in the morning. I'll just wait on that. But I do know that the responses have been so appallingly off key. We grieve for New Orleans. We will contribute to the GoFundMe efforts that are put together for the family. But Tom Wilson, who is the CEO of Allstate Insurance and the sponsor of the Allstate Insurance Sugar Bowl, it's a big deal. Their brand is built on mayhem. Their brand is they spend billions on brand. He's got a C-suite. He's got a COO, he's got a board of directors, he's got a chairman of the board. And whenever someone blows a moment in a way that this was blown, I ask myself, who were they talking with? Were they talking to their vice president of communications? Of course, if you watched any of the dramas about family wealth descending, going back to Dallas, right through the most recent one that gripped everyone, the name of which is escaping me right now, Succession. If you've watched anything from Dallas to Succession, you know that people say extraordinarily stupid things when they're under stress, and crisis communications consultants arrive, and they tell you what to say, and they tell you how to say it, and they go, and you're wondering, I'll bet you they had a crisis communication consultant involved. What do you think? What are the odds of that? The odds are 100% that they called in the vice president of corporate communications who worked on the statement along with their outside counsel, and they talked themselves into this. Cut number 8, one more time.
Welcome to the Allstate Sugar Bowl. Wednesday, tragedy struck the New Orleans community. Our prayers are with the victims and their families. We also need to be stronger together by overcoming an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Join Allstate working in local communities all across America to amplify the positive, increase trust, and accept people's imperfections and differences. Together, we win.
Okay, did he not look up and say, why am I saying this? Who am I to tell people they need to overcome addiction to divisiveness and negativity? Who am I to say that we need to accept other people's differences? Aren't I making a judgment on our customers? Who came up with this? Really? Let's get in here and talk. What is the origin of this sentence? Let's actually talk about this sentence. Do we want to say that America is addicted to divisiveness and negativity? It isn't. I don't know about you. I just spent 3 days watching college football. It's the opposite of divisiveness and negativity. You know what? There are a lot of different people in the stands. There are a lot of different people on the sidelines. There are certainly different kind of young men on the field. Come from all sorts of different experiences. You saw proud parents. New Orleans was brought together. Everyone is rooting for New Orleans. This country is it's not Syria. This is not Iran. We are not torn apart by divisiveness and negativity. Are you an MSNBC viewer? We just had an election. Nothing happened. We're going to have the peaceful transfer of power again. We are celebrating, beginning in April, the 250th anniversary of our independence. Right? The shots heard around the world. Lexington and Concord this April, 250 years ago. I hope Team Trump is already working on it. I hope the president's up in Lexington and Concord, site of my first campaign in 1974. And all they can come up with, all the king's horses and all the king's men surrounding the CEO of one of the biggest companies in America. And Allstate's one of the bigs. I have to wonder, does the guy read? Do the people around him think about the finger they are leveling. We need to overcome our addiction to divisiveness and negativity. It was not an addiction to divisiveness and negativity that led to the terrorist attack on New Orleans. It was not a refusal to accept our differences. It was an ideology that is comprehensive and deeply evil. It is an ideology that wraps itself around the brains of people. It's different from the woke mind virus. But the people who gave you this statement are guilty of are infected by the woke mind virus. And you've got to fire them. You've got to say to them, how could you possibly have given? I don't believe it's Tom Wilson's fault. I think some vice president for communications gave it to him. And nobody bothered to, it's just pablum. Stop doing pablum. This is the genius of Scott Jennings on CNN, by the way. It's the genius of the Ruthless podcast. It's the genius of the editors, the genius of Getting Hammered, the genius of Dwayne's World, the genius of my podcast, Highly Concentrated Hugh. Just talk about what's going on. Do not attribute to other people what they think. Unless they tell you, don't attribute to people. I don't think, by the way, I'm about to talk to Tim in Tampa. I don't know who Tim is, but I'll bet she's not addicted to divisiveness and negativity. Tim, are you addicted to divisiveness and negativity?
Absolutely the opposite, Mr. Hewitt. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Good morning.
This
What did
such-
you make of this guy's statement?
I can't put it any better than you did, Mr. Hewitt. This country is the most loving, the most giving, the most caring. Look at history. When there's a problem, who goes? Who goes first? Who gives most? Who helps most? Who's all over the world doing exactly the opposite of what this guy said? And I'll tell you who I think his communications team is. It's the same one that runs the White House, because they don't have a clue. Well, that's not true. That's not what I really think. What I really think is they do have a clue, and they are addicted to the divisiveness. Just as soon as
That is an excellent insight, Tim. To write this, you must yourself be an angry person. You're right.
Exactly.
To write
My
this,
point exactly.
you
Thank you.
must, in fact, be rejecting people's differences. You must think the problem are Trump supporters. I don't know what you think. You must think MAGA's the problem, as opposed to people who resort to, say, driving a truck down Bourbon Street and killing 15 people. It's really the MAGA. It is incredible to me that it got through the system. I'll take more calls after the break. Don't go anywhere, America. Actually, let's talk to Tarzana Joe. Let's line up Joe after the break, and then I'll come back, America. Mr. Wilson, I'd go out and give another statement today. I'd write an op-ed for the Journal and explain how that happened to you, because it was a mistake. Tarzana Joe with the first poem of 2025. Hello, Joe.
Happy New Year, you.
Thank you.
Each year possesses Thank you. Each year possesses character, benevolence or viciousness. Approaching 2025, I'm feeling its auspiciousness. Forgive me if I make my point a little ungrammatically, but this one is a special year. I'm speaking mathematically. For not since 1936, I told you it was rare, the number 2025 is quite the perfect square. And also, if you multiply the squares of 9 and 5, the product of that process is 2025. You get it if you add the squares of 40, 5, and 20, a fact that could just signify catastrophe or plenty. But if you think that calculus might make the year divine, it also is the sum of cubes from 1 through number 9. We beat the dreaded Y2K. We beat the Mayan curse. Though it might seem like hubris, math can make the perfect verse. And though the news is full of pain and things we ought to fear, it's up to you and me to make the perfect year. That's 2025 by Tarzana Joe.
Tarzana Joe, where did you discover your mathematical instinct? I'm glad to know that. That's counterintuitive. I would never have guessed that.
Well, I get my news from HughHewitt.com and X. So that one was on X.
Okay, well, I'm here to tell you that Joe is hard at work in a new year, 2025, and those of you who have a poetry need, make your New Year's resolution to get to Joe early. TarzanaJoe@Reagan.com is his email, or you can go to TarzanaJoe.com and find a button, right, Joe? There's a button there.
I want a poem. Very, very simple.
I want a poem.
Very
It's
clear.
not that
I
hard.
want a poem.
It's easy.
I want a poem.
I mean, his rates are very, very reasonable, and there's nothing like a poem to make the year go by and fly. Joe, thank you, and thank you for your information on numerology, which I was simply unaware of. That I'm going to approach this year differently now. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
One of the things I'm going to do differently. Thank you, Joe. I'm going to make sure I do more calls in the afternoon. Rick in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Good morning, Rick. What do you think of the Allstate man?
Hey, good morning, Hugh, and happy super awesome Trump is coming New Year.
Thank you.
So I got a little bit different take on this. I work for a very large corporation, and one of the things I've noticed about large corporations is if they have if they have some troublemakers, they tend to not address the troublemakers specifically, but they will put out a blanket statement concerning the behavior of the troublemakers.
Oh, interesting. So this is aimed interior to Allstate?
Well, what I'm thinking is, I mean, as conservatives, we disagree with the ideology of leftists. Leftists hate Trump people. I mean, they're not disagreeing with our ideology. They hate us. I mean, even to the point of saying, "Don't go to Christmas with your family. Don't go to."
Oh, I know. There are some broken people. Yeah. Trump broke some people. I don't want to overstate it. I don't think Mr. Wilson is broken. I think Mr. Wilson is the product of a conveyor belt of nonsense. And the conveyor belt of nonsense has been running on in this country for 10 years. And I haven't talked to Ben Domenech about this. Part of it is legacy media is stuck in the woke cycle. But he's an old white guy. And he's up there talking about addiction and I really am astonished that this got passed, people. Hey, thank you, my friend. It is the third day of 2025. I'm so pleased that it is the first day of this year that I get to talk to Ben Domenech. He is editor-at-large at The Spectator. He's a Fox News contributor. You see him on frequently over at the Fox affiliates, and he is a weekly guest of mine to wrap up the week. Happy New Year, Ben. I hope you got off to a glorious start.
Yes, Hugh. In fact, I am a New Year's Day baby, so that means that every year that passes, I have the double whammy of knowing that this is another year of spinning around the globe, and that also leads me to be someone who is, has a birthday when everyone else is hungover, tired, and can't do anything.
Happy belated birthday! My sister-in-law is a January 1 baby, and she used to be told by her parents, who were hungover at the time, that the Rose Parade was for her, and someone would set up a table for her, and then they'd go back to bed. Did that happen to you, Ben?
No, that did not happen to me, but it did. But it does mean that occasionally I did have to deal with the fact that it is the most unreliable day for making any plans.
Oh,
you cannot plan with anyone. There's just always, I'm just not feeling that well today. Yeah,
no, I'm not feeling that well goes around. I like to tell people I had a birthday on February 22nd, so it was the best of times, the worst of times. When I was young, I got the day off from school because that's George Washington's birthday. But then when I got to high school, they abolished that, and it was just another day. So I feel aggrieved.
Well, that's ridiculous. I think you need to advocate the next time that you.
I am, but I have another ridiculous thing. Ben, I am 25 years older than you, so I've watched probably 100 more bowl games. But I've probably watched 250 bowl games, all or part thereof, in my life of watching college football. Are you a college football fan?
Of course I am. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
In all those years, all those bowl games, I have never before commented on the public service announcement or the branding made by the guy who's sponsoring it, right? So this is the first time I have ever had occasion to play a bowl sponsor statement. But Tom Wilson, the CEO of Allstate, before the Allstate Sugar Bowl was played and kicked off, had to go on screen and say this, cut number 8.
Welcome to the Allstate Sugar Bowl. Wednesday, tragedy struck the New Orleans community. Our prayers are with the victims and their families. We also need to be stronger together by overcoming an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Join Allstate working in local communities all across America to amplify the positive, increase trust, and accept people's imperfections and differences. Together, we win.
All right, so Ben Domenech, I would like to know, are you addicted, Ben Domenech, to divisiveness and negativity?
Well, I believe in negativity and divisiveness when it comes to the idea of tolerating radical anti-American terrorists.
Yes!
Put that very clearly. Okay, I mean, what does it mean to be divisive? What does it mean to be negative? From my perspective, we should tolerate no one who engages in any of the activities that lead them to drive a truck with a ISIS flag billowing behind it, into a crowd of people. That's not about negativity. That's not about positive vibes. That's not about something that, is going on within our community that, suggests a kind of, political narrative that we just can't get, along with our neighbors or something like that. And that's a problem. No, that's a radical agenda of hate. It's something that we should not tolerate as Americans, and we should not have any place for it in our communities. And the idea that this is something that you can just wash away with happy talk, it makes me just, I'm sorry, Hugh.
I know, it did me too. I
don't want to get an FCC violation by saying what I really think about.
I know, please don't. I'm on 450 stations, and you take an FCC violation, multiply it by 450, and that's the cost. It's never happened to me. That's why we have a delay. Second thing he said, we have to accept people's imperfections and differences. Ben, is there any place on the planet, or indeed in human history, that has been more accepting of people's imperfections and differences than the United States of America in 2024 and 2025?
Absolutely not, Hugh.
No!
And look, I'm sorry. When your agenda includes just, sitting innocent people down in a desert and lopping their heads off for the fun of it, that's not an imperfection. I think you have some bigger deals going on in your life than that. You have some bigger problems.
All right, now I'm going to come back to the major point, but I have to add one more clip here. This is Althea Duncan, first on the scene by the FBI, the Assistant Special Agent in charge. Her first statement after a terrorist has obviously done terrible things. Cut number 15.
Kirkpatrick said, we'll be taking over the investigative lead.
No, we've got the cut where she's not speaking. Rats, the audio is betraying us. The deal is, she says, this is not a terrorist event.
Not a terrorist act.
What is going on, Ben, with the president of Allstate telling us we have to overcome our negativity, that we have to accept differences, and the head of the FBI immediately saying it's not a terrorist act when no one could possibly know that?
On the first count, that's someone who doesn't know what time it is and is still taking lessons from a communications team that views everything through the lens of, the worst sin is to offend. You must, give the most bland possible statement. You can't, offend anybody, and you can't take any kind of stance at all, which is a position that is thoroughly over in American corporate life. That's just not something that works anymore. It's as if they haven't updated anything over the last several years, where we've learned that all of that DEI related crap was something that just was pablum, and that people understood and recognized it as such. When it comes to the FBI, that's a much deeper problem, because from my perspective, it's an illustration of the fact that the real issue that people have with the FBI isn't just that it's been politicized. It isn't just that it's targeted Republicans or conservatives or COVID parents or Donald Trump. It is that it is a bureau that does not fulfill its function and its duty to the American people.
I want to play the audio, Ben, so that the audience who's hearing it for the first time. This is Althea Duncan yesterday morning at the scene of the terrorist attack.
Kirkpatrick said, we'll be taking over the investigative lead for this event. This is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found, and we are working on confirming if it's a viable device or not. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we're asking everyone to stay away from Bourbon Street, specifically from Canal Street to St. Anne. That is my ask. Once again, stay away from Bourbon Street, Canal Street, all the way to
Yeah,
say,
you know,
and
Ben, what bothers me the most about this is her reflexive rush to it's not terrorist act, but even worse, this is my ask is another one of those phrases that infiltrated the language that is a way of asserting authority without earning authority. I think it is simply the combination of Tom Wilson's pablum and Althea Duncan's disconnectedness from reality, and they're both reverting to woke speak. How deep is the problem?
Look, I think the problem is much deeper than anything that we've really fully understood when it comes to our government agencies. You know, the corporate side of things, I think people understand that. I think people look at that and they roll their eyes and they shrug. If you were standing in a sports bar yesterday watching this and you saw that, corporate speak come on the air, come on. There were people who were definitely laughing at that. But if you were listening to someone from the FBI who should be trusted to be much more serious about this, and she's saying that kind of thing, this is my ask. I mean, it's just absurd. And Hugh, this is part of. There's so many examples where we say, well, this is the reason that Trump won, but this is the reason that Trump won.
Yeah, yes. And by the way, she also got Kash Patel confirmed yesterday. I really do believe that.
I think you're completely correct. In fact, I was joking about it yesterday with a friend. But it's one of these things that I think is so illustrative of the absolute failure of these institutions. If they just did their job, I think people would be more willing to go along with the woke speak, with more, of this pablum and that kind of thing. But they don't do their job. They don't do their job well, and they are constantly trying to gaslight us into believing things that simply are not true.
Well,
something like this is not a terrorist event. It's just absurd.
You have just landed on the key part, which is gaslighting. And gaslighting is a term that is abused. It simply means to try and pretend that things are not as they are. And I want to go back to Tom Wilson. Ben is going to stick around with me through the break and come out on the other side. But Ben, do you know anyone who is addicted to divisiveness and negativity? Anybody at all in your life addicted to negativity and divisiveness?
Thankfully, in my latter years, Hugh, I have effectively eliminated all of those relationships that do not involve blood, and to be honest, my family's great. So it's one of these things where I accept that the only divisiveness is about where do we want to go for dinner or which movie do we want to see.
Yeah. So my theory, which I'm going to begin explaining with Ben during the break, is that someone who wrote this is themselves afflicted by an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Has to have been that way. Ben, I teach my young law students, never tell the judge they're wrong. Never tell the judge what they are thinking. It is an invitation to have the judge angry at you and your case dismissed or your client screwed. What this CEO from Allstate begins to do is to lecture America. Do you think he was aware of what he was saying?
So I don't know him, obviously, personally. I don't know, his background. But what I do know is that every bit of the language used in that statement reflects a viewpoint that is very common within the communications shops of corporations across the country, corporations that have taken stances and done all of this incredible, essentially the paying of indulgences over the course of the past several years, sparked around the time of Ferguson and then ramping up incredibly after the death of George Floyd, that saw billions of dollars, poured into various initiatives designed to end racial divisiveness and, the kind of, toxic attitudes within America, because it was something that they felt that they needed to do in order to look good. That's something that is absolutely at odds with their interests as a corporation, and it's also not the place for them to live and exist as American companies, to tell Americans what to think and how to feel. And that's something that is, I think, has led to a real backlash, one that, obviously Vivek Ramaswamy and other people have documented over the course of the last several years against this type of woke corporate attitude. The attitude that a corporation in America should have toward someone targeting people in New Orleans in the way that they were is one of utter disgust of promising to help the community that they participate in, help their employees that are affected by this if they are, to weigh in and to be a benefit to those who are around them. It is not to lecture us about divisiveness, about any kind of political acrimony, or suggest in some way that hating a terrorist is something that might make us seem racist. And that's just the facts, Hugh. It's not something that should be even up for debate. And for an American corporate leader, one as connected as Allstate to all these manners of sports, we see their ads ubiquitously on every channel.
They're the mayhem people.
Yes, everything that is connected to that is something that should make us say to them, "What do you think you are? You're an insurer, okay? You are an American corporation. You are not someone who gets to lecture us about feeling divisive when someone goes in and kills a bunch of fellow Americans and we get mad about it. Don't talk to us like that, because if you do, there are ramifications for it. And we've seen those ramifications play out, and that's why Shane Gillis is doing ads for Bud Light.
Amen. You anticipated where I was going in the next segment. How do you dig out of this hole? And the way you dig out of this hole is by attaching yourself to transparency and truth, and there is no other way out, and reject the copy that is given to you by the people impacted by the woke mind virus. There's really one story we're talking about, which is the woke mind virus in America. Ben, we'll come back to Tom Wilson in a moment. They are very comfortable with lecturing Americans about not being racist and bigoted and divisive and accepting differences and imperfections and getting over our negativity. They are profoundly uncomfortable with moments like this. Before the game yesterday, Texas football players Jahdae Barron and Quinn Ewers did this, cut number 9.
I mean, yesterday in Bible study with Kevin Washington, there was a few guys that went up there. Kevin asked us to tell a reason and a reason why you deeply and strongly got closer with God and why you trust God. And Cedric went up there and he told us his story. And Jake Majors went up there, and I also went up there. And I told all the guys, like, last year and the years before previously, I wanted things done on my time. But it doesn't work like that. God has everything planned. It's already written. And all you have to do is just keep going with the process and just trusting the process, and then allowing everybody to be a plus in your life and trusting everybody. So just literally relying on God. And then Psalms 105 verse 1, just give thanks to the Lord and proclaim his greatness and show the whole world what he has done. I mean, I'm showing y'all with my talent, but I mean, I'd be surprised too when God just pushes me and go out there to allow me to make plays like that. So
it's just been super cool to see the amount of guys that have really let God come into their heart. And, me being part of that and Jahdae being part of that, it's kind of like a domino effect in the locker room. I think more guys are, starting to come to Bible study, come to chapel, whatever it is, and just to see that. And I think that's what grows us closer as well. Just the amount of guys that are putting their faith in the Lord has just been really cool to see. I mean, we pray.
Ben, my point being, I saw Will Howard give a testimony as well after he won the Rose Bowl. These guys have just won the bowl that Texas beat Arizona State in. I guess it's Fiesta Bowl. They're all giving testimonies. American media doesn't know what to do with this. Have you ever heard any reporter ask anyone making a testimony about their faith a follow-up about their faith?
I haven't. It's one of the things that I actually, Hugh, I actually like to talk about this in my interviews with people. It's not necessarily something I include in the interview, depending on how personal people want to get with it. But it's something that I bring up because I think it's an insight in terms of how people react to it. And it's something that's really bold and noble. Quinn Ewers, by the way, is a great kid. I mean,
yeah, he is.
I don't know what the future looks like for him. He may need one more year. He may transfer. We'll see. But he's just his story is great, and the way that he's been able to deal with and confront the challenge of having Arch Manning, looming over him has really been an incredible thing throughout this college season. And, his performance in that overtime game was incredible. I think that this is an indication to me of the gap between the way that the worldwide leader, in quotation marks, would like to talk about sports and the way that people in sports talk about sports, meaning that players and the things that they highlight, the way that they analyze the game over at ESPN is really so out of touch with what the actual viewers know about these people now. It's like you're living in an alternate universe. It doesn't actually cover the way that these people live, the way that they are, and it's one of the reasons of the success for alternate sports programming, not just Barstool and Outkick, but others, that, basically digs into the things that these people are actually like. You can create these images of people that are at such a remove from reality, from where these kids actually live, what they're thinking about and how they are, that the average fan, the average viewer can see that gap. And that's something that I think is really significant that's happened in recent years, that we've been able to get access to who these people are really like, and we see them in their good moments and their bad, and it's something that makes for one of the reasons why people are more engaged in live sports than ever, Hugh, and that's something that I think is a benefit to America and continues to be and will, despite the fact that Tom Wilson is saying the kind of pablum that he is.
And my last, I'm going to keep Ben for 3 more minutes after the break, because my last segment is simply going to pose the question. The All-State Speak, I don't blame Tom Wilson for doing it. He was given that piece of paper that came from his vice president for communications, and I doubt he had any chance to figure it out. They had to record something. The game was coming on at 4 o'clock in the East, I believe. And he read it, and he got his statement out. The difference between that and kids talking about their faith is truth. They're actually speaking what they believe. And the question, if you don't know what you believe, don't say anything. My final segment with Ben is really a tutorial for corporate America about how to talk to Americans in the aftermath of any event that involves your brand. And I think, Ben, it ought to begin with compassion for victims, and that was present in the All-State speech, and then no lectures. Harold Kushner, the late great Rabbi Kushner, who wrote When Bad Things Happen to Good People, told me for a PBS interview 20-odd years ago, show up and shut up. And when anyone goes through a trauma, show up and shut up, help out around the house, mow the grass, do stuff. Don't try and tell them how you understand how they feel. You don't. Do you think America is ever going to figure out the Bud Light and the Allstate mistakes are self-inflicted wounds and just shut up about this stuff?
Yes, I do think that, because one of the things that we saw happen, and I saw it happen really, live and up close with the Bud Light situation, was the backlash was so significant and included so many different people just saying, don't do this kind of crap, that you actually had a response from corporate America that I think overwhelmed the push that they got from these lefties that exist within these comms departments across corporate America, who come in basically with a mindset and their own religion, really, of the way that people ought to talk about things, and that it's important for corporate America to be, quote unquote, a leader. And from their perspective, that means pushing Americans in the direction that they would like them to go. That's not something that Americans have typically expected. I don't go and expect, the person who I'm hiring to do a job to lecture me on other things about my life. You don't ask a plumber to come in and give you advice about how you should live or what you should believe. But I think that one of the things that Americans appreciate when they see corporate America take a step back from that is recognizing their place within society, recognizing their place within our culture. These are significant entities, very significant entities, but they also do not have the place or the stature to lecture us about what we believe or how we live. And that's a simple fact that the comms department folks have not learned during their 4 years in any kind of elite education program that is entirely based on people that they would judge if they were still alive today.
Okay, so Ben, last question. I consider myself a normie and you to be a normie. We happen to be political people and well-informed about current events, but we're normie. We have normie families and normie stuff. Do you think Tom Wilson has heard from enough normies that he's going to call a meeting of his senior staff and say, how did this happen? What did we do you think there will be, he'll look around and say, how did you guys embarrass me this badly and do such brand damage to Allstate?
Yes, I think that will happen because in fact those normies include a lot of people who care about college football and we're probably pretty astonished to see this happen. look, Hugh, I want American companies to be great American companies and to succeed, of course. But there are also learning moments for them about the place that they inhabit and the values that place espouses. And if you aren't interested in being an American company, if you're interested in lecturing us and telling us how we need to get better and do the work in order to understand terrorists and the reason that they might come plowing into crowds of people, I don't think you need to be an American company anymore. I think you can go over to Britain. They're a lot more. They're a lot more welcoming of that.
Go find yourself a woke society, because this one has had it. Ben Domenech, always a pleasure. Follow him on X at @BDomenech. Listen to his podcast, a weekly podcast from Ben Domenech. Watch him on the Fox News channel. Of course, read The Spectator. Thank you, Ben, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Hugh.
Joined by Philip Alboni, who's up in Boston somewhere. Philip is the publisher of globalpost.com, your daily compendium of news from places around the world that you otherwise would not know because legacy media has closed most of their foreign bureaus. Good morning, Philip, and Happy New Year. We're beginning our year by talking about Russia and the very bad year it had in 2024. You have the floor. Give us our education.
Well, first of all, good morning to you, Hugh, and Happy New Year. I hope it'll be a great one for you and your family and for our country. This morning we're writing about Russia's influence in Africa, which has been growing for the last decade, particularly the Wagner Group, if you remember them, led by the late Yevgeny Prigozhin, who died in the middle of the Ukraine war. He tried to mutiny against Putin. That didn't work out well for him. So they right across the kind of the top of Africa, what's called the Sahel countries, Mali and Burkina Faso and Niger and Central African Republic, Russia's developed a lot of influence. At the same time, France has been leaving its, kind of historic colonial role in that part of Africa, usually being asked to leave by the host country. So
and we've been booted too, haven't we? Did we get booted out of Niger?
We did, exactly right. These countries are autocracies. They all have a considerable amount of instability, usually by Islamic jihadist groups of one form or another, some connected to Al-Qaeda, some connected to Islamic State, some more kind of native tribal groups that have been always there. So things have been shifting, but Russia is now starting to lose some influence in these countries. And a big event was what happened in Syria, where President Assad was forced to leave. He went to Moscow. And Russia is in danger now of losing its two big military bases in Syria. They have a big naval base there, right on the Mediterranean, and they have an air base in the north of the country. And these were kind of staging areas for them to exercise influence in Africa. They'd be able to, fly supplies from Russia to Syria and then on to these African countries. This may be lost completely. It's being discussed by the new leaders of Syria and Russia. So that could be a big change.
I read the piece this morning, and I thought to myself, this is all good news about Russia's declining influence across the northern tier of African countries. However, I wondered immediately, if they pull out from Syria, will Chinese ships pull in? Do you have any guess, Phil, about the follow-on knock-on effect of the People's Liberation Army Navy coming in and filling up what the Russian gap leaves behind?
There's no evidence of that. I mean, China does have one of its only military bases outside of China itself in Djibouti, which is,
Correct.
On the Red Sea. And so they do have a kind of a foothold in the continent. It could expand, but they haven't really shown any appetite for doing that so far. So, I mean, I think a big question is whether the new administration is going to, kind of double down on Africa and reinsert the United States in some of these areas. I mean, I think I said in a previous program, Hugh, that one of the issues that does get overlooked is the threat of Islamic terrorism. Well, we saw it in New Orleans, tragically. And, you know, the Islamic State has a considerable amount of power still. In fact, it's growing in some areas. We cannot give up on the war on terror. And, Africa is one of the areas that they are strongest, and they are continuing to grow and influence in Africa. It's a matter of
I
real
had an
concern.
Uber driver this week, Philip, a Nigerian man, been in the country for 10 years. His kids are Americans, and he's on a green card. And we talked about Nigeria, which is one of the most important countries in the world, both in population, resources, its inclination towards the West. But he said the North is convulsed with jihadism. And so I don't think this is particularly unique to Mali or to Niger or to Burkina Faso or all the various places. What do we do about that? It's an autocracy ridden belt of countries, but the alternative are jihadis.
Well, it's a great question. And, so Nigeria, West Africa, down in Mozambique, which is on the other side of the continent, uh, the Islamic State is causing a great deal of trouble, and it's a matter of real concern. And the issues are different, but they're also related in the sense that they are trying to disrupt the current regime. They carry out, kidnappings, attacks on villages, killing people, killing soldiers, ambushing soldiers, trying to destabilize things. This is, the classic game. And, the governments are Nigeria, you mentioned. It's been more than a decade since those schoolgirls, which we all perhaps remember, were kidnapped from their village in the north of Nigeria, taken away. Some of them have never come back. Some have come back. Some traumatized, forced to marry. Their
Jihadis.
captors.
It is a. Here's my exit question to you, Phil. As Russia withdraws, it's good news for Ukraine because they're losing their influence in the world, and it is a suggestion that Putin is weaker, far weaker than we think, but he's still got all the nukes. Do you think their retreat from Africa is helping Ukraine persevere?
I think I don't know about that, Hugh, but I do know that Ukraine is active in Africa, fighting. In fact, the Wagner Group lost quite a considerable number of soldiers in Mali in an ambush, and apparently Ukraine was involved, maybe supplying intelligence information to the Malian forces. The third anniversary of the war is coming up in February, Hugh, and things are going to start changing after January 20th. We know what the president-elect has said. People around him have strong opinions about what should be done. It looks like the war will be winding down, but I know that's not something that you would agree with.
Well, I don't know. I think actually Trump's been on both sides of the issue of whether or not we ought to arm the Ukrainians in an effort to establish himself as the broker of a good faith deal. I don't know that he can pull it off. The Global Post will cover that. I want Philip to make sure we use a minute. This is our last conversation in this time zone. We move to the afternoons on January 13th. Everyone listening right now can go to globalpost.com and subscribe. You get a daily newsletter. If you're a teacher or a student, it's free. And I stress that every single time Philip gives us some time because we want the American student to be smart, and they can be smart for free. I'm going to have my law students learn this because it actually helps you get a job if you know what part of the globe you're talking about. And Phil, I wonder how many law students can pass that test. What do you think? You think law students can identify where countries are on the globe?
No, I don't.
I don't either. So I'm going to be using it for my law students beginning next week. So I want to go and send everyone over to globalpost.com. Philip Alboni has an effort to reach every homeschooler, every elementary kid, every high school kid, and their teachers, and college professors, and their students for free. But if you're just a good old Joe who likes their news, go to globalpost.com and subscribe. Thank you, Philip Balboni. I want to play for you a little Pierre Polyev. How do I say his name? Generalissimo? Pierre what?
It's still Polyev.
Polyev. Pierre Polyev. He did a podcast with Jordan Peterson. Cut number 11.
Well, we have a clearer mission statement, and people know exactly why we're in this. Whenever someone asks me if they say, I'm thinking of running for parliament or for mayor or some other political position, what's your advice? Well, I said, well, before I get to the advice, I have a very simple question. Why do you want this job? Mm-hmm. And it might seem like a simplistic question, but it's actually the most important question in life. Why? Why are you doing what you're doing? And our answer to that...
Right there. Boy, Pierre just earned his pay. Why do you want this job? Are you putting in time? Are you learning skills? Does it satisfy your curiosity? Does it make you happier? Does it make you more fulfilled? To lead a country is not something I've ever aspired to, but I hope that people who want to do it for the right reason. They believe in the Constitution or the Declaration or both, and hopefully both. It's in the case. Pierre, I'm sure he believes in Canada. It's a great question to ask no matter where you're going to work this morning. Why are you doing this job? Are you doing the right job? Are you happy doing this job? Can you make a change? Ought you to leave this crazy state, California, or Oregon or Washington, or if you're living up in Massachusetts or New York, what are you doing? Why are you giving away all your money to that dysfunctional state? You ask yourself, why do you do this job? Do this and think about it. I've got a little more Pierre to play. Coming up, the Hillsdale Dialogue. I'm opening the year with Dr. Larry Arnn and Dr. Khalil Habib talking about the two big ones, the two big revolutions. 1776, ours, the 250th anniversary of which actually begins in April, because that's when Lexington and Concord, shots heard around the world, were fired. And then 1789, when the French Revolution goes off the wheels. And we're going to spend a couple of weeks saying, are we living in revolutionary times? Times of great upheaval. The markets don't think so. My daily market report is brought to you by our friends at AmericanFederal.com. AmFed Coin and Bullion have been selling people gold for 40 plus years. You call them at 1-800-221-7694. You'll get the owner, Nick Grovich, or one of his teammates. There are only a half dozen guys. They're all specialists. 1-800-221-7694. And you say, I'm interested in investing in gold. And they'll ask you a couple of questions. And basically, the normal, ordinary Joe just wants to buy Krugerrands, Maple Leaves, or Gold Eagles and put them in their safety deposit box and forget about them. They have for the past 100 years, more than kept pace with inflation. It's the way you diversify your portfolio is owned to physical precious metals. Some of you want to convert your IRA to a gold IRA. They can handle that for you as well at MFed. But if you go to AmericanFederal.com, it's mostly about buying gold. Now, yesterday, gold reached $2,669. It's continuing to creep up. That's when the Dow was off 0.36, the S&P down 0.22, and the NASDAQ down 0.16. It was a bad day on the market yesterday, but this week doesn't mean anything. This week, there's nobody working. The volume's off. You can't really tell. But you can tell that over 100 years, gold has more than kept its value. So if you want to anchor your wealth in that which will never disappear, buy yourself the Maple Leaves, 1 ounce, the American Eagles, the Krugerrands. Doesn't matter. Whatever Nick's got, they're very upfront about their commission. The more you buy, the less you pay as a commission. And they buy your gold if you need to sell it. Just call them, 1-800-221-7694. 1-800-221-7694. And they'll be joining me in the afternoons when I move there, and that's a brand new audience for them. That's terrific. Let me tell you one more thing. I am not mad at Tom Wilson, the CEO. If you missed my conversation with Ben Domenech, we'll post it at YouTube. If you missed my opening analysis of what Tom Wilson said at the Sugar Bowl yesterday, he's the CEO of Allstate. I'm not mad at him. I'm not encouraging a boycott. I am pointing out to everyone who communicates with the public, do not lecture the public. Do not tell them that they are addicted to divisiveness and negativity. Do not tell them that they've got to begin to accept other people's imperfections and differences. This is a very tolerant country. This is a country where generally people do not care what you're doing if it doesn't interfere with them. We tolerate the crazy packs of bikers on streets. We tolerate people who are looking at their phone when they enter the crosswalk. We wish nobody ill. We pray for everyone. We pray for our country. But corporate America, stop lecturing me about how bad my country is. We did not drive the truck down Bourbon Street, killing 15 and wounding 30. That was an Islamic jihadist who may have had a schizophrenic break. I can't really tell. He was working for Deloitte. He's an Army veteran. He did a lot of years of service. Something was wrong with him. Something went haywire, and we won't really know. His family is stunned and are reported to be gathering in New Orleans, and they're horrified. It does not give a license to Allstate to tell us we're not the problem. We didn't drive the truck down Bourbon Street, Allstate. Do not go back. I hope one thing comes out of this, that Mr. Wilson, and you're welcome to come on my program, Mr. Wilson, calls a meeting this morning of his C-suite, and he asked the Vice President of Communications to bring with him his senior staff, because they're going to be a bunch of Deputy Vice Presidents for Communications. Allstate's big. Allstate's paid all that money for the BAM commercials. And he looks around the table and said, would you all please comment on whether you think my message at the Allstate Sugar Bowl was good? How did we come to develop this message? Let's break it down piece by piece. Can we play it one more time? It's 29 seconds long. Cut number 8.
Welcome to the Allstate Sugar Bowl. Wednesday, tragedy struck the New Orleans community. Our prayers are with the victims and their families. We also need to be stronger together by overcoming an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Join Allstate working in local communities all across America to amplify the positive, increase trust, and accept people's imperfections and differences. Together.
Let me close. I've never seen Allstate working in my community. All right, the people that work in my community to grow tolerance and inclusiveness are churches and some great schools and some not so great schools. But I've never seen a corporation do that. Corporations deliver product and services. I have never been lectured before on being addicted to divisiveness and negativity. I'm not. And I have no trouble accepting people's imperfections. Everybody who is a Christian understands that everybody falls well short of the glory of God and has their own perfections. They have the mote in their own eye. Really, Allstate, we didn't need that. And a caution to the Cotton Bowl and whatever bowls we're playing in the semifinals that Ohio State will dominate. Don't do that again.